So most people don't fail at rebuilding their life after divorce because they aren't trying. They fail because they're doing the right work in the wrong order. You're trying to date when your identity is crushed, or you're trying to find yourself when your nervous system is still addicted to your ex. So if you feel like you're taking one step forward and two steps back, it's not because you're broken. It's because you're building your house from the roof down. Today I'm going to show you the hierarchy for healing. We call this the rift recovery process, a 4-stage blueprint for rebuilding your life. Now, whether you've already taken our assessment and you're looking at your recovery scores, or you're just searching for a map out of the chaos, this video will explain exactly why you feel stuck and the 4 stages you must go through to rebuild a life that's actually better than the one you left behind. And while we're talking, I'm going to help you do a quick self-audit in real time, so you get value immediately, even if you haven't taken the self-test yet. When a relationship ends, the pain isn't just emotional, it's total. It hits your thinking, your sleep, your confidence, your identity, and your social life all at once. And the most common mistake that people make is they try to fix the loudest pain first. You feel lonely, so you try to date, or you feel anxious, so you try and force closure, or you feel worthless, so you go chasing reassurance. But healing has a physics to it. You can't build the second floor if the foundation is cracked. So this is the rift recovery pyramid that we use, and it starts at the bottom with thinking. This is the foundation. Then there's feelings, then identity, and then relationships. Notice the order. Thinking is the foundation. Relationships are the roof. If you try and build a new relationship before you've stabilized your thinking, the whole structure collapses. So now let's walk through the 4 stages so that you can identify exactly where you are and what you actually need next. So let's do a quick mini audit. Rate yourself from 1 to 10 for each layer. So 1 means you are deeply affected. 10 means you are the best you could possibly be. Now, don't overthink it, just be honest. So the first one is your thinking. How clear is your thinking right now in general, right? Second one is feelings. How intense are the emotional waves of grief or anger, and how fast do you recover? The third one is identity. Do you still feel like you? How's your self-worth and confidence? And the last one is relationships. Do people feel safe to you? Can you trust others? And your own judgment again. Now, write down these 4 numbers. So again, you might have anywhere from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest and 10 being that you're feeling great in this area. Again, start with your thinking. How am I doing with my thinking? Then how am I doing with my feelings? Third one is identity. And the last one is your relationships. And I'm not just talking about dating, I'm talking about in general. Now, this gives you a rough snapshot. If you want precise measurement, that's where our assessment comes in. Our self-test is based on the work of Dr. Bruce Fisher, and it's designed to measure how you're adjusting so you can stop guessing. Depending on which version you took, you'll see your scores in one of 2 formats. Format A is the 100-question official Fisher Divorce Adjustment Scale. It's got disentanglement, grief, anger, self-worth, social trust, plus an overall score. That's 7 scores. Format B is a shorter version. It's the 25-question divorce recovery score, and it's got your thinking, your feelings, identity, relationships, plus an overall score. That's 5 scores. Either way, the point is very similar. You get a clear picture of where you're stable, where you're struggling, and a chart you can use to track progress over time. But here's the most important rule. Higher scores mean more adjusted, lower scores mean less adjusted. So a low score isn't a verdict, it's just a signal. It means this layer needs support and structure. It's kind of like a blood test where, let's say, your iron is low. Just know that you can do things that will change that fairly quickly. We call it, another way to call it is our emotional weather report, right? It's a way to just get what is going on inside of you right now. Now, you only need to know about 3 ranges. So 80 and above is our target range for each of the categories. When somebody's 80 and above in all of these, we see that people are doing pretty well. Doesn't mean they're done, but they are steady and grounded. 40 to 79 is where most people are. It's the most common. It means that, you're a work in progress. You're functioning, but you're still getting hit by things, but you're getting by. And then 39 and below is where you're struggling. That area is actively disrupting your life, your sleep, your focus, your mood, your decisions, your confidence. Now, here's the key. We don't start by chasing the lowest category. We start at the bottom of the pyramid. Because if thinking is unstable, everything else above it becomes harder. So let's go through these. So stage 1 is your thinking. In the assessment, we measure this primarily through disentanglement. Disentanglement measures how much space the relationship and your ex are taking in your head. When this score is low, it often looks like obsessive thoughts and mental loops, replaying conversations at 3 a.m., checking their social media even though it hurts, maybe bargaining if I explain it right, or just needing closure to move forward. So here's the hard truth. You cannot process feelings if your brain is hijacked. That's why a lot of people will say, I'm doing all the right things, I still feel stuck. Because they're trying to use logic to solve what is, at its core, a nervous system loop. So if you have a low disentanglement score and a low grief and anger score, usually this is because you're trying to think your way out of your feelings. And if you're here, your goal isn't happiness yet. Your goal is just mental stability. So what do you do if you're in stage 1, if this is a low score? First, reduce exposure. So close the loops, strict boundaries on checking their social media, any communication. Do as little as you can just to give yourself some space. So you're not being cold, you're just protecting your mental environment so you can heal. Okay, the second thing is the essentials, right? Get as much sleep as you possibly can, eat healthy amounts, get some exercise, move, do some things, get structure in your life. Because what we find is if the brain is exhausted, everything gets harder. The next one is find your power. So many people feel helpless and hopeless or lost. Usually this is mental overwhelm, and this is what the disentanglement often represents. So creating an intention that inspires you and gives you strength can have surprising benefits. Ultimately, though, the secret for most people is working on the feelings. If your thinking layer is low, especially if it's 39 or below, don't worry about dating. Don't worry about your 5-year plan. Just focus on getting your brain back online. Okay, so once your mind is stable enough to focus, then you move up to feelings. And this is where we deal with grief and anger. And notice we didn't start here. Because if you dive into deep grief when you're still mentally obsessed with your ex, you can drown. But once you have mental stability, you can build a container, right? You have structure to be able to then focus on it. So let's talk about the grief. So grief isn't weakness, it's attachment. It's basically love with nowhere to go. So the goal isn't to make grief just disappear. The goal is to let go. You see, divorce is a loss of expectations. That's what grief is. You are letting go of the hopes and dreams. You're releasing the sadness. The lower your score, the more one of these will affect you in one of the following ways. So waves that hit out of nowhere, these are the lower the score, we see that the more intensely they hit. Maybe the mornings, middle of the night, or weekends, you are overcome by the grief, crying, or numbness. So what helps here? First, recognizing the grief for what it is. So people often avoid it, try to keep their mind busy, stuff it down. That doesn't make it go away. It just delays your healing. We've had people come to us 5, 10, 15, even 23 years after their divorce and say, I still have a lot of grief. So turning into the grief and learning to feel it is the most important thing you can do. Now, many people think that grief is just something you have to live with, and that's a myth. There's this great phrase, if you take the time it takes less time. So we teach a lot of different grief exercises, but I can tell you with the right system and guidance, you can reduce your grief by as much as 80% an hour. I know because I did when I went through my divorce. I struggled for 8 months and then did a few exercise, and 80% of just evaporated, just gone. And it's not just me. We see this same experience with many of our students in our programs. When you learn to grieve well, it will change your life. Now, let's talk about anger. Anger is often misunderstood. A lower score here doesn't mean you're a rageaholic. It means that you feel powerless. And here's a different way to think about it. Anger is your dignity's bodyguard, right? It's the part of you saying, I deserved better than this. So what do you do for your anger? Well, don't suppress it, right? But don't let it drive the car either. Use it as fuel for setting boundaries, for clarity, for self-respect, and for really digging into what's underneath the anger, because anger is a secondary emotion. The reason is that if you don't work on it, anger pulls you into fights, text, court drama, and it often drops you right back into stage one. In fact, a lot of people, this is the thing that they are hurting so much, they try and hurt their partner. And this is where the lawyer fees and everything go way up. Now, we work on anger after grief. And the reason is that grief and anger are often combined. So grief often causes anger. The sadness turns into anger because we don't know where to put it. Now, everyone's different, but we see better results on average when anger is second. Stage 3 is identity. So divorce is an identity injury. You didn't just lose a partner, you lost the version of yourself that was a husband or a wife. You lost the future you thought you had. And a lot of people lose themselves in the relationship. And when that partner is gone, they don't know who they are. Now, your self-worth and social self-worth scores tell you how you treat yourself when you're alone and with other people. When identity scores are low, self-worth or social self-worth, people often feel shame and they say, how did I let this happen? Or maybe rejection, that they weren't chosen, or fear, something around, I'm too old, I'm unlovable, I can't start over. Even social collapse, I don't even know where I fit anymore. But here's the secret. This is where you form Life 2.0, and not in a cheesy way, in a real way. So you're rebuilding who you are, and you can rebuild it stronger. So what do you do in stage 3? First, rebuild your self-trust. Self-trust is built through evidence. Small promises kept to yourself. I'm going to the gym, and you go. Or you say, I'm going to stop checking their socials, and you stop. Or I'm going to save money, and you do. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your identity stabilizes. You stop looking for value in your ex's opinion, you start finding it in your own actions. This is where you move from we back to me. And we find that the identity phase is where most people try to start, and this is a mistake. The first 2 phases are basically learning how you think, then learning how to feel your feelings. Those then give you better information to learn who you are. Now, at the top of the pyramid is relationships. This is measured primarily through social trust. And this is where people mess up. They try to put on the roof before the foundation is dry. So if you try to date when your thinking is obsessive or your feelings are volatile and your identity is crushed, you tend to attract chaos. Or you accept things you shouldn't, or you get hurt again. But if you've climbed the pyramid, if you're stable, processing feelings, and you like who you are, relationships become a choice, not a life raft. So what do you do in stage 4? First, start with safe connections, not necessarily romance yet. Build your friendships, your community, and your sense of belonging. Learn to trust slowly and learn to trust your judgment again. So in 2025 alone, we had nearly 7,000 people take this self-test. And as a result, we've seen some very common patterns of the scores. So we're building a library of common score profiles, call them case studies, so that you can recognize yourself and stop feeling like you're the only one. So for example, sometimes someone has a stronger thinking stability, high score in disentanglement, but the feelings are still low. So that pattern often shows up when someone has done a lot of talk therapy, but they still are struggling with emotional flooding. So other profiles suggest different situations. A lot of times I can see infidelity, addiction, depression, relationship status, etc. So if you want, make sure you're subscribed because we're going to break down those profiles and show what usually helps most. If you've taken the assessment, here's how to use your scores. Look at the overall score. Start at the bottom, the thinking. Then look at the feelings, then identity, then relationship. And here's a simple rule. If your thinking layer is low, especially under 40, stop worrying about your relationship score. Fix the foundation first. If you haven't taken the assessment yet, I've linked it in the description. You'll get your numbers for each layer and a way to track progress as you rebuild. Recovery isn't a mystery, it's a process. And now that you have the blueprint, you can stop guessing and start building. I'll see you in the next video.